The vast observation deck of Kepler Prime gleamed like polished obsidian, its panoramic windows offering an unobstructed view of the iridescent gas giant below. Commander Jake Morrison stood motionless, hands clasped behind his back, watching the swirling purple-blue storms rage across the alien world's atmosphere. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive, flower-like structure of gleaming metal and crystalline components orbiting the distant star system. To the untrained eye, it was beautiful. Morrison knew better. "Beautiful death trap is more accurate," he muttered. Captain Alex Stone approached, her footsteps barely audible on the polished floor. "Sir, we've received confirmation. The Zephyrian High Council has agreed to meet." Morrison turned, his weathered face betraying nothing of the tension coiling inside him. At 53, he had seen enough combat to know when a situation was about to go catastrophically wrong. 27 years of military service had honed that instinct to a razor's edge. "And Dr. Carter?" he asked. "Waiting in the diplomatic chamber with the science team. She's nervous. She should be. We all should be." Morrison straightened his uniform, the sleek, midnight blue of United Earth Space Command, standing in stark contrast to the organic, almost insect-like architecture surrounding them. The Zephyrians didn't build this station as a goodwill gesture. Stone nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the same unease. At 36, she had risen quickly through the ranks, earning her reputation as one of the most brilliant tactical officers in the fleet. "Intelligence suggests they've been studying us for decades. This station was operational long before they made contact, which means they've had plenty of time to prepare for whatever they're planning." Morrison checked his neural interface, a subtle blue glow pulsing beneath the skin at his temple. Status of the Liberty and Defiance: holding position at the edge of the system. Weapons powered down as requested, but shields at maximum. Admiral Wright isn't taking chances. "Smart woman." Morrison began walking toward the diplomatic chamber, Stone falling into step beside him. "Let's hope this is just paranoia talking." The corridor leading to the diplomatic chamber was a masterpiece of alien engineering, a living, breathing pathway of what appeared to be both metal and organic components. The walls pulsed with subtle bioluminescence, casting an eerie blue-green glow over everything. Morrison had never gotten used to it. The entire station felt like being inside the body of some massive organism. "Commander," Stone whispered, "have you noticed the increase in what look like defensive structures throughout the station?" Morrison nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Hard to miss. They've added at least 30 new emplacements since our last visit 3 weeks ago. Whatever they're preparing for, it's happening soon." The diplomatic chamber doors slid open with a sound like rustling leaves. Inside, the human delegation waited anxiously. Dr. Lisa Carter, the chief xenobiologist for the mission, stood examining one of the strange, flowering structures that emerged from the walls. Her slender frame was tense, fingers moving rapidly over her datapad. "Commander," she greeted, her voice tight, "I've been analyzing these new growth formations. They're producing an unusual biochemical compound I haven't seen before." "Hostile?" Morrison asked bluntly. "Unknown, but they've appeared throughout the station in the last 48 hours. Carter tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear, her green eyes troubled. "Something's changed in their behavior pattern. The Zephyrians have always been cautious, but this feels different." Before Morrison could respond, the far wall of the chamber seemed to ripple and part. 3 tall, insectoid figures entered, their exoskeletons gleaming with an iridescent sheen that shifted colors with each movement. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, the Zephyrians moved with unsettling grace for creatures of their size. The central figure, adorned with elaborate carapace markings that signified its high rank, stepped forward. High Regent Vexthal's multifaceted eyes reflected the room in disorienting fractal patterns as 4 of its 6 limbs performed the elaborate greeting ritual. "Commander Morrison." The translator implant in Morrison's ear converted the clicks and vibrations into English. "We are pleased you have answered our summons." Morrison performed the customary response gesture, though his muscles remained tense. Summons is an interesting choice of word. High Regent, I was under the impression this was a continuation of our trade negotiations. The Zephyrian's mandibles clicked rapidly. A sound Morrison had learned indicated amusement, though rarely the benevolent kind. "Indeed. We are here to discuss terms." Vexthal's upper limbs made a sweeping gesture, and the walls of the chamber suddenly illuminated with projection after projection. Star systems, planets, military installations. Morrison felt his blood run cold. Every image showed human colonies, outposts, and military bases. Some were classified locations that shouldn't have been known to any alien species. "What is this?" Stone demanded, her hand instinctively moving toward the sidearm she had been required to leave behind. "This," Vexthal's translated voice remained eerily calm, "is a comprehensive analysis of your species' expansion pattern through this sector of the galaxy. Impressive for such young star travelers." Dr. Carter stepped forward, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding caution. "You've been monitoring our colonization efforts?" "Not monitoring, Dr. Carter. Evaluating." The Zephyrian's secondary limbs produced a small, crystalline device that projected a holographic display in the center of the room. "Our civilization has existed for over 30,000 of your years. We have encountered 17 sentient species during our expansion." The hologram shifted to show various alien life forms Morrison didn't recognize. None exist any longer. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Morrison kept his expression neutral with considerable effort. "Is that a threat, High Regent?" "Merely historical context." "Commander." Vexthal moved closer, towering over the humans. "Your species possesses qualities we find concerning. Your adaptability, your unpredictability, your capacity for both remarkable empathy and savage violence. You are dangerous. All sentient species have the capacity for both creation and destruction," Dr. Carter interjected. "Our diplomatic mission has been focused on peaceful coexistence. Peace is not an option." Vexthal cut her off. "The High Council has deliberated extensively. We have studied your history, your conflicts, your rapid technological advancement. Your species represents an unacceptable variable in this sector." Morrison stepped forward, positioning himself between the Zephyrian and his team. "I think we should reconvene after you've had time to reconsider your position." "There will be no reconsideration." Vexthal's mandibles clicked rapidly. "The terms are simple. Humanity will surrender all colony worlds in this sector and agree to containment within your home system. In exchange, your species will be permitted to continue existing." Stone's expression darkened. "And if we refuse?" "Then, within 48 hours, we will begin the systematic elimination of human presence from this galaxy, starting with your colonies nearest to our territory." The hologram shifted again, displaying a series of human outposts suddenly disappearing in flashes of light. "Your military capabilities, while impressive for your development stage, cannot withstand our full deployment." Morrison's mind raced through options, none of them good. "This is an act of war, Vexthal. We came here in peace." Peace was never a possibility. "Commander, you may relay our terms to your leadership. You have 48 hours to begin evacuation of your colonies." The Zephyrian moved toward the exit, then paused. "This station will, of course, be your temporary headquarters while you coordinate your surrender. You and your team will remain here." As the aliens departed, the chamber fell into stunned silence. Morrison turned to Stone, his voice low and urgent. "Emergency protocol starburst, now." Stone nodded, activating her neural interface with a series of subtle eye movements. The encrypted emergency signal would reach Admiral Wright within minutes. "They're going to kill us regardless," Dr. Carter said quietly, her scientific detachment giving way to stark fear. "This station, I've suspected from the beginning it's not just a diplomatic outpost. It's a research facility. We're being studied." Morrison looked around the chamber, suddenly aware of how the walls seemed to pulse with increased intensity. "We need to get back to the ships, now." As they moved toward the exit, the doors sealed shut with an ominous hiss. The bioluminescent lighting shifted from blue-green to a deep, pulsing red. "Commander," Stone's voice was tight with controlled panic. "The atmospheric composition is changing." Dr. Carter checked her wrist monitor, her face paling. "They're introducing a neurotoxin, specifically designed for human physiology." Morrison pulled an emergency breather from his belt, distributing the limited supply to his team. This was their plan all along. The meeting was just to deliver terms before they eliminated the negotiators. "Diplomatic immunity at its finest," Stone said bitterly, securing her breather. Morrison scanned the chamber, looking for any weakness in the seemingly seamless construction. "Carter, those growth formations you were studying, could they be vulnerable to anything we have?" The xenobiologist considered for a moment, then reached into her kit and produced a small laser scalpel used for taking biological samples. "The cellular structure contains high concentrations of phosphorus. If we could ignite it." "Do it," Morrison ordered. As Dr. Carter carefully approached one of the larger growth clusters, Stone monitored the rapidly deteriorating air quality. "Whatever you're going to do it fast. These breathers won't last more than 15 minutes. Carter adjusted the scalpel to its highest setting and sliced into the pulsating growth. A viscous, amber fluid leaked out, emitting a strong, acrid odor, even through their breathers. She quickly stepped back and aimed the laser at the puddle forming on the floor. The reaction was immediate and violent. The fluid ignited with a blinding flash, and the fire spread rapidly along the organic components of the wall. Alarm sounds, high-pitched, insectoid screeching, filled the air as the station's defense systems activated. "Move!" Morrison shouted, leading his team toward the burning breach in the wall. Beyond it lay a service corridor, mercifully free of the toxin now filling the diplomatic chamber. They ran, following Stone's perfect recall of the station's layout toward the docking bay where their shuttle waited. Behind them, the organic components of the station seemed to writhe in pain as the fire spread. "They never expected us to fight back," Dr. Carter gasped as they rounded a corner. "They think we'll surrender." "Then they don't know humanity very well," Morrison growled. When they reached the docking bay, they found two Zephyrian guards blocking their shuttle. Without hesitation, Stone launched herself at the nearest one, using her smaller size and human agility to evade its powerful limbs, while Morrison tackled the second guard. The aliens were stronger, but the humans were quicker, more adaptable. Dr. Carter raced for the shuttle controls, preparing for emergency departure as Morrison and Stone finally subdued the guards. "They're calling for reinforcements," Carter warned, her fingers flying over the control panel. "We have maybe 2 minutes before we're swarmed." Morrison and Stone dragged themselves into the shuttle, blood seeping from various wounds. As the door sealed behind them, Carter initiated the launch sequence, overriding the station's docking protocols with emergency codes. "Admiral Wright needs to know what's happening," Morrison said, wincing as the shuttle tore free from the docking clamps and accelerated away from the station. "The entire human race is under threat." Stone established a secure channel to the Liberty. "This is Captain Stone requesting emergency extraction and fleet-wide alert. Authentication code Sierra November 47 Tango. We are declaring extinction level event. Repeat, extinction level event." As their shuttle raced toward the waiting human vessels, Kepler Prime began to change behind them. Sections of the flower-like structure were unfurling, revealing what were unmistakably weapon emplacements. "They're powering up," Carter reported, monitoring the scanner. Targeting systems activating. Evasive maneuvers, Morrison ordered. Though he knew their small shuttle had little chance against the station's weaponry, just as the first energy bursts lanced out from Kepler Prime, the Liberty and Defiance decloaked directly in their path, shields absorbing the attack as the shuttle slipped into the Liberty's docking bay. Admiral Emily Wright was waiting when they disembarked, her face grim. Extinction-level event confirmed. All colonies have been notified to initiate Defense Protocol Omega. Morrison nodded, his expression hardening. They gave us 48 hours before they start wiping out our colonies. Then we have 47 hours to develop a counterattack, Wright responded. Because humanity doesn't surrender. As the Liberty and Defiance accelerated to light speed, leaving the Kepler system behind, Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the vast network of Zephyrian outposts surrounding human territory. They chose war with humanity, he said quietly. Let's make sure they regret it. The Emergency War Council aboard the UES Liberty had been in session for 6 hours. The ship's central command center, normally spacious, felt cramped with the addition of holographic projections from colony leaders and military commanders from across human space. Admiral Wright stood at the center, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun as she addressed the grim-faced assembly. The Zephyrians have made their intentions clear, she said, her voice steady despite the enormity of the threat. They intend to systematically eliminate our presence in this sector, beginning with our outermost colonies. Their technological advantage is significant, but not insurmountable. Captain Stone stepped forward, directing attention to the strategic display. Their power comes from centralization. All Zephyrian ships and weapon systems are controlled through a hierarchical network. If we can disrupt their command structure, we can create chaos in their ranks. And how exactly do we disrupt an enemy with superior technology and numbers? Asked Colonel Martinez from Europa Command, his holographic form flickering slightly. Morrison answered, by using what they don't expect. The Zephyrians have studied our conventional warfare tactics, but they've overlooked something fundamental about humans. He paused, looking around the room. We adapt, we improvise, we do the unexpected. Dr. Carter, who had been analyzing data from their escape, joined the conversation. The Zephyrians are a hive-minded species with a rigid hierarchy. Their strength is coordination, but it's also their weakness. They struggle with rapid changes and unpredictable behavior. So we hit them when they don't expect it. Admiral Wright nodded, considering. Commander Morrison, I want a strike plan within 2 hours. Captain Stone, coordinate with all colonial defense forces. We're initiating full military mobilization. As the council dispersed to their assignments, Morrison pulled Dr. Carter aside. I need everything you have on Zephyrian biology. Weaknesses, vulnerabilities, anything we can exploit. Carter's expression was troubled. Commander, I've been analyzing the neurotoxin they attempted to use on us. It was specifically engineered for human physiology. They've been studying us on a genetic level for years. Could that work both ways? Morrison asked, lowering his voice. Could we develop something that targets their biology? The xenobiologist's eyes widened slightly. You're talking about a biological weapon. I'm talking about survival, Doctor. Morrison's expression was grim. They've already decided on our extinction. We need every option on the table. Carter was silent for a moment, ethical considerations warring with survival instinct. It would be possible, she finally said. Their hive biology has vulnerabilities. Their immune systems evolved to fight threats on their homeworld. But like any species, they would be vulnerable to engineered pathogens. How quickly could you develop something? That depends on what you want it to do, she replied carefully. Something to incapacitate. Weeks. Maybe. Something more. Permanent. That would require extensive testing, ethical considerations. We don't have time for ethical debates. Morrison cut in. They've already made their decision about us. Start working on it. Codename Project Blackout. Top clearance only. As Carter left with visible reluctance, Captain Stone approached with a tactical display. Commander, I have an idea for our first countermove. The Proxima Centauri asteroid field. Morrison studied the display, a slow smile spreading across his face. Ambush among the rocks. Classic, but effective. The asteroids contain high concentrations of ferrous metals that will disrupt their sensors. Stone explained. If we position our fastest ships as bait, we can draw their advanced fleet into the field, where our stealth destroyers will be waiting. They'll expect us to run, to evacuate our colonies. Morrison nodded. Not to strike back immediately. Admiral Wright joined them, reviewing the plan. It's risky. Those asteroids are dangerous navigational hazards even without enemy fire. But our pilots train for exactly these conditions, Stone countered. The Zephyrians rely heavily on automated systems and predictive algorithms. The chaos of the asteroid field will negate those advantages. Wright considered for a moment before nodding. Make it happen. I want our best pilots on this. If we can bloody their nose in the first engagement, it might buy us time to evacuate the civilian populations from the border colonies. As preparations for the ambush began, Morrison found himself on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. They looked the same as always, cold and distant, giving no indication of the existential threat humanity now faced. "Penny for your thoughts," came Admiral Wright's voice as she joined him. "Just wondering if we're doing the right thing," Morrison admitted. "Biological warfare crosses a line." Wright's expression was solemn. "They crossed that line first. Jake, that neurotoxin on Kepler Prime was just the beginning. We've intercepted communications. They have deployment systems ready for every human colony world. They've been planning this for years. Still doesn't make it right." "No, it doesn't." Wright sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 62 years. "But I'm responsible for the survival of our species. I'll carry the moral burden so others don't have to." The alert system chimed, interrupting their moment of reflection. Captain Stone's voice came through the comm. "Commander, Admiral, the bait ships are in position. Zephyrian vessels approaching Proxima Centauri." "Here we go," Morrison murmured, straightening his uniform. "Time to show them what happens when you threaten humanity." The battle at Proxima Centauri unfolded with both terrifying intensity and surprising success. The human bait ships, the fastest frigates in the fleet, danced through the asteroid field with precision that no automated system could match. When the Zephyrian pursuit fleet followed, they found themselves surrounded by stealth destroyers that had been magnetically anchored to the larger asteroids. The resulting chaos was exactly what Stone had predicted. The Zephyrians, unable to rely on their superior technology amid the electromagnetic interference, suffered heavy losses before retreating. It wasn't a decisive victory, but it was enough to shake their confidence in a quick subjugation. Back on the Liberty, the mood was cautiously optimistic as Morrison presided over the debriefing. "We've bought ourselves time, but that's all. Their main fleet hasn't even engaged yet. At least we've proven they can be hurt," Stone pointed out. "The psychological impact of this defeat will force them to reevaluate their timeline, which means they'll hit us harder next time," Morrison cautioned. "We need to press our advantage while we have momentum." Admiral Wright nodded. "Captain Stone, I want detailed analysis of their retreat vectors. Commander Morrison, coordinate with the colony evacuation efforts. We need to get civilians out of the potential strike zones." As the meeting disbanded, Morrison made his way to the science lab where Dr. Carter had been working non-stop since their escape from Kepler Prime. He found her surrounded by holographic displays of Zephyrian cellular structures, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Progress?" he asked without preamble. Carter gestured to the displays. "Their biology is fascinating. The Zephyrians aren't just insectoid in appearance. They have a true hive structure at the cellular level. Each individual contains genetic markers that connect them to the whole. And I've isolated a viral vector that could potentially disrupt those connections. She manipulated the hologram, showing a simulation of cellular breakdown. In theory, it would target only Zephyrian biology, attacking the specialized cells that maintain their hive consciousness. Morrison studied the simulation with a mixture of hope and dread. Effects? Variable. From mild disorientation to complete neural collapse, depending on exposure levels. Carter's voice was clinical, though her hands trembled slightly. It would spread through their air filtration systems, which recycle atmosphere throughout their habitats and ships. How soon can it be ready for deployment? Carter's professional demeanor cracked slightly. Commander, we're talking about potentially genocidal biological warfare. Even under these circumstances, there are ethical considerations. Dr. Carter, Morrison interrupted, his voice low and intense. I just received reports from Proxima Colony. Before we could complete the evacuation, the Zephyrians deployed atmospheric converters. 20,000 civilians suffocated as the air was transformed to match Zephyrian atmospheric requirements. They're terraforming our worlds while we're still on them. Color drained from Carter's face. I didn't know. This isn't about ethics anymore. It's about survival. Morrison placed a hand on her shoulder. How soon? She swallowed hard. 3 days for production. Another 2 for weaponization. You have 2 days total. Whatever resources you need are yours. Morrison turned to leave, then paused. Lisa, I don't like this any more than you do. But they've made their choice. Now we make ours. As Morrison left, Dr. Carter turned back to her work, tears silently tracking down her face as she continued the calculations that might save humanity and doom another species. The next 48 hours saw frantic activity throughout human space. Colonial evacuations accelerated, military assets were repositioned, and Admiral Wright authorized Operation Blackout, despite vocal opposition from some civilian leadership. In the science lab, Dr. Carter worked without rest, her ethical concerns subsumed by grim determination after viewing footage from the Proxima Colony massacre. The biological agent, now designated Thanatos, progressed from theoretical to actual, its viral structure specifically engineered to target the unique cellular connections that made Zephyrian hive consciousness possible. Morrison found her late on the second night, staring at a sealed containment unit holding the first batch of the pathogen. Is it ready? He asked quietly. Yes. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Limited exposure will cause neurological disruption, essentially severing individuals from the hive mind. Full exposure will trigger cascading cellular failure. She turned to face him, her eyes hollow. I've become death, Commander. You've become humanity's salvation, he corrected gently. The deployment question remains. We need to introduce this into their central systems for maximum effectiveness. Their mothership, Carter said. Intelligence indicates it contains their primary atmospheric processing hub. If we can release Thanatos there, it would spread throughout their fleet within hours. Morrison nodded. I'll speak with Admiral Wright. We'll need a special operations team. The War Council reconvened as the Liberty rendezvoused with the rest of the human fleet at the edge of the Tau Ceti system. The tactical situation had deteriorated significantly, with Zephyrian forces advancing on multiple fronts, despite the initial setback at Proxima Centauri. We've lost contact with 4 more colony worlds, Admiral Wright reported grimly. Their main fleet is moving faster than anticipated, and they've begun deploying what intelligence is calling atmospheric converters on captured planets. Genocide, someone muttered. Yes, Wright agreed bluntly. Which is why Operation Blackout has been authorized by emergency powers of the United Earth Government. The announcement sent a ripple of tension through the room. Many officers knew what biological warfare meant, both practically and morally. The plan is straightforward, Morrison explained, taking center stage. A small team will infiltrate the Zephyrian mothership using a captured scout vessel. They will release the Thanatos pathogen into the central air processing system, then extract before symptoms begin manifesting. "And if extraction fails?" asked Colonel Ryan Burke, the Special Operations Commander, who would be leading the mission. "Then, you ensure the pathogen is successfully deployed before you're captured," Morrison replied, meeting Burke's gaze steadily. "Humanity's survival depends on it." Burke nodded, his weathered face showing no fear. "My team will get it done, Commander." As the council adjourned and preparations for the infiltration mission began, Captain Stone approached Morrison with a secondary proposal. "While Burke's team has their attention, we should strike at their command structure directly." "What do you have in mind?" Stone displayed a tactical projection. "Intelligence from our deep cover agents suggests High Regent Vexthal will be personally overseeing the attack on the Sol system. If we could eliminate him, it might throw their hierarchy into temporary chaos." Morrison studied the projection thoughtfully. "An assassination alongside biological warfare. We're crossing every line in the book." "Alex." "They crossed the line first," she replied, echoing Admiral Wright's earlier sentiment. "And frankly, we're running out of options." After a moment's consideration, Morrison nodded. "Propose it to Admiral Wright. If she approves, you'll lead that mission personally." As preparations continued, Lieutenant Amy Foster, the communications specialist who had been analyzing Zephyrian transmissions since the conflict began, requested an urgent meeting with Morrison and Carter. "I've discovered something," she explained, her youthful excitement breaking through the grimness of war. "The Zephyrians don't just communicate verbally or through technology. They use pheromone-based signals as a secondary channel, especially for emotional content and emergency responses." Dr. Carter leaned forward, intrigued despite her exhaustion. "That makes sense given their insectoid evolution. How does this help us?" "Because," Foster continued, "if we can replicate or interfere with those chemical signals, we could potentially create confusion in their ranks. It would be like jamming their communications, but on a biological level." Morrison exchanged a glance with Carter. "Could Thanatos be modified to include this approach?" "Possibly," Carter said slowly. "If Lieutenant Foster can isolate the chemical compounds involved, we might be able to create a dual-action pathogen, one that both disrupts their neural connections and floods their systems with false pheromone signals." "Do it," Morrison ordered. "Anything that increases our chances of success." The modified plan came together with remarkable speed. Colonel Burke's infiltration team would now carry two versions of Thanatos, the original pathogen and a modified variant designed to disrupt pheromone communications. Meanwhile, Captain Stone prepared for her assassination mission, studying everything known about High Regent Vexthal's security protocols. As the final preparations were made, Morrison found himself once again on the observation deck, staring at the stars that had once represented humanity's future, and now seemed to hold only uncertainty. "We're ready," came Admiral Wright's voice as she joined him. "Burke's team leaves in 2 hours. Stone departs shortly after." Morrison nodded silently. "Having second thoughts?" Wright asked. "No," Morrison replied honestly. "Just wondering what will become after this is over. If we survive by becoming monsters, was it worth it?" Wright placed a hand on his shoulder. "History is written by the survivors. Jake, let's make sure we're around to write it." The mission launch was conducted with solemn efficiency. Colonel Burke and his 6-person team departed in the captured Zephyrian scout vessel, their faces set with determination as they embarked on what many considered a suicide mission. Captain Stone's stealth craft followed soon after, disappearing into the void with its deadly purpose. As the Liberty and the rest of the human fleet prepared for the diversionary attack that would hopefully draw attention away from the infiltration teams, Morrison found Dr. Carter in her lab, staring at nothing. "It's done," she said without looking up. "Whatever happens now, I've crossed a line I never thought I would." Morrison sat beside her. "We all have, Lisa. But remember why we're doing this." "To survive," she whispered. "But survival at any cost. Is that really living?" Before Morrison could answer, the ship's alert system activated. Admiral Wright's voice came through clear and urgent. "All personnel to battle stations. Zephyrian fleet detected entering the system. Operation Shadow begins now." The darkness of space erupted into chaos as the human fleet engaged the vastly larger Zephyrian armada. The Liberty led the charge, its advanced shields absorbing punishment that would have destroyed lesser vessels as Morrison coordinated the attack from the command center. "Keep their attention focused on us," he ordered. "Burke and Stone need all the cover we can give them." Aboard the captured scout vessel, Colonel Burke and his team approached the massive Zephyrian mothership, a structure more akin to a mobile city than a conventional spacecraft. Its surface bristled with organic-looking weapon emplacements and strange, pulsing growths that seemed to serve as sensor arrays. "Approaching entry point," Lieutenant Foster reported. Her fingers dancing across the alien control interface she had learned to operate through weeks of intensive study. "Transmitting authentication codes now." The tense seconds stretched as they waited for the massive ship to either grant them access or obliterate them. Finally, a docking portal irised open, admitting their small craft into the cavernous hangar bay. "We're in," Burke confirmed over the secure channel. "Beginning Phase 2. As the infiltration team made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the mothership, Captain Stone's stealth craft was approaching a smaller command vessel, where intelligence suggested High Regent Vexthal was coordinating the assault. Her craft, utilizing experimental cloaking technology, slipped past the outer defenses undetected. "Target vessel in sight," she reported, initiating docking sequence. Back on the Liberty, Morrison could only wait and monitor the fragmented communications as both teams proceeded deeper into enemy territory. The main battle was going poorly. The Zephyrian technological advantage was telling, with human ships falling one by one despite their valiant resistance. "We can't hold them much longer," Admiral Wright reported grimly. "Our forward shields are at 30%. "We just need to buy a little more time," Morrison insisted, watching the tactical display where Burke's team was approaching the central air processing hub of the mothership. Inside that massive alien vessel, Burke and his team moved with practiced stealth, using the modified pheromone disruptors Dr. Carter had provided to confuse the few Zephyrian guards they encountered. The effect was immediate and disturbing. The insectoid aliens became disoriented, their coordinated movements deteriorating into chaotic, almost seizure-like spasms. "The hub should be through the next chamber," Foster whispered, consulting the schematics they had pieced together from intelligence reports. The chamber they entered was vast and pulsating with life. Organic filters, processed atmosphere, through what appeared to be massive, breathing lung-like structures. At the center stood a crystalline control node, its surface flickering with bioluminescent patterns. "That's our target," Burke confirmed, removing the sealed container of Thanatos from his pack. "Foster, interface with the system. The rest of you, defensive positions." As Foster worked to bypass the alien security protocols, Burke prepared the pathogen for distribution. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Once released into the central hub, Thanatos would be distributed throughout the mothership and, through the connected atmosphere processing network, to every Zephyrian vessel and installation linked to the system. "I'm in," Foster announced after tense minutes of work. "Ready when you are, Colonel." Burke hesitated for just a moment. The weight of what they were about to do, the potential extinction of an entire species, heavy on his shoulders. Then he remembered the footage from Proxima Colony, the men, women, and children who had suffocated as their atmosphere was converted. His resolve hardened. "Initiating deployment," he said, connecting the container to the interface Foster had prepared. Simultaneously, aboard the command vessel, Captain Stone had reached her target after dispatching several guards, using non-lethal methods that wouldn't trigger alarm systems. The Zephyrian Command Center was unlike anything human military architecture would design, a chamber that seemed almost organic, with High Regent Vexthal physically connected to the ship's systems through biomechanical interfaces. Stone raised her specialized weapon, a dart gun loaded with a concentrated dose of Thanatos designed to work instantly rather than spread. One shot was all she would need. As she took aim, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. On her neural interface, a message flashed from Foster. Emergency. Discovered. Deploy now. Stone fired, just as Vexthal turned, the dart striking the Zephyrian leader in the neck rather than the more vulnerable thorax she had been aiming for. Immediately, security protocols activated, and Stone found herself surrounded by guard drones. Back on the mothership, Burke's team was in a similar situation. Their presence discovered, they fought desperately to protect Foster as she completed the pathogen deployment sequence. "It's done!" she shouted over the weapons fire. "Thanatos is in the system!" Extraction route compromised. One of the team reported as more Zephyrian guards converged on their position. "We need an alternative." Burke made a split-second decision. "Foster, take Phillips and Martinez. Get back to the ship. The rest of us will hold them here." "Colonel," Foster began to protest. "That's an order. Lieutenant." Burke's voice was calm despite the chaos around them. "Someone has to report the mission's success. Now go." On the command vessel, Stone was fighting her own desperate battle for survival. The dart had affected Vexthal, but not as completely as intended. The High Regent was convulsing, greenish fluid leaking from his mandibles, but still alive and still connected to the ship's systems. "Stone to Liberty," she managed to transmit between exchanges of fire. "Target wounded but not eliminated. Thanatos partially effective. Requesting extraction options." Morrison's voice came through, distorted by interference. "Negative on extraction, Captain. All assets engaged. Can you reach your craft?" A blast caught Stone in the shoulder, spinning her against a wall. "Negative," she gasped, feeling blood soaking through her uniform. "But I can still complete the mission." With grim determination, she fought her way closer to the dying but still dangerous Vexthal. The High Regent's multifaceted eyes fixed on her, mandibles clicking in what might have been fury or pain. "You have doomed yourselves." The translator rendered his weakening clicks. "The War Queen already knows. Stellar Manipulator deployed." Stone's blood ran cold at the unfamiliar term. "What is the Stellar Manipulator?" But Vexthal was beyond responding, his systems shutting down as Thanatos spread through his body. With the last of her strength, Stone placed explosive charges around the command center and staggered back toward the corridor. "Liberty, this is Stone," she transmitted. "High Regent is down. Request immediate fleet withdrawal. Something called Stellar Manipulator has been deployed. Unknown weapon system, but sounds catastrophic." As she detonated the charges, destroying the command center and herself with it, her final transmission reached the Liberty. "They chose war with humanity. Make them regret it." The human fleet was in full retreat, their diversionary attack having suffered heavy losses but achieved its primary objective. Both infiltration teams had succeeded, at least partially. Thanatos was spreading through the Zephyrian fleet, and High Regent Vexthal was dead. But Stone's final warning cast a shadow over these victories. On the Liberty's command deck, Morrison and Admiral Wright frantically searched intelligence databases for any reference to a stellar manipulator. "Found something?" a young intelligence officer called out. Deep infiltration reports from 6 months ago mentioned a project with that designation. It was believed to be theoretical, a weapon capable of inducing solar flares in specific stars. Wright's face paled. "They're going to destabilize our suns." "Which system would they target first?" Morrison demanded. The tactical officer's voice was hollow. Based on deployment trajectories and energy signatures we're detecting, the Sol system. Earth, Wright whispered. They're going to hit Earth. The grim reality settled over the command center. Even as Thanatos spread through the Zephyrian fleet, potentially ending their civilization, they had deployed a weapon that could end humanity's homeworld. How long do we have? Morrison asked. The device appears to be en route now, the tactical officer reported. Estimated arrival in the Sol system in 72 hours. Every available ship to intercept, Wright ordered. Contact Earth Defense Command. They need to prepare for the worst. As the fleet regrouped and set course for Earth at maximum speed, Morrison sought out Dr. Carter in the medical bay, where she was treating survivors from damaged ships. We have a new problem, he explained, detailing what they knew about the stellar manipulator. Carter listened in growing horror. Even if Thanatos wipes out their entire species, this weapon could still destroy Earth. Exactly. We need options. Carter thought for a moment. If it's designed to induce solar flares, it must use some form of magnetically charged particles to disrupt the star's magnetic field. If we could generate a counter-frequency, would it work? In theory, but we'd need to get close. Dangerously close to both the device and potentially to the sun itself. Morrison nodded grimly. Start working on it. I'll find us a ship and a pilot crazy enough to try. That pilot turned out to be Captain Julia Ross, commander of the stealth vessel Shadow, known for her unorthodox tactics and almost supernatural piloting skills. Ross had survived 3 missions considered suicidal by fleet standards. Let me get this straight, she said when Morrison explained the mission. You want me to fly into the jaws of death? Get close enough to an alien doomsday device to deploy a theoretical countermeasure while potentially being cooked alive by solar radiation? That's about the size of it, Morrison confirmed. Ross grinned, her scarred face lighting up with reckless enthusiasm. When do we leave? The next 72 hours were a race against time, as the human fleet pushed their engines beyond safe limits to reach Earth before the stellar manipulator. Dr. Carter worked feverishly with Ross to modify the Shadow systems for the mission. Meanwhile, reports from across Zephyrian space indicated that Thanatos was working, perhaps too well. The pathogen had spread rapidly through their interconnected atmospheric systems, causing massive casualties and system-wide chaos. We're looking at the potential collapse of their entire civilization, Carter reported during a brief strategy meeting. The modified strain is particularly virulent. It's not just killing them. It's severing their hive connections first. They're dying alone, cut off from their collective consciousness. The implications hung heavy in the air. Genocide, even of an enemy determined to eradicate humanity, weighed on their consciences. Any word from Burke's team? Morrison asked, changing the subject. Lieutenant Foster and 2 others made it back to our lines, Wright informed him. Colonel Burke and the rest of the team sacrificed themselves to ensure the mission's success. Morrison nodded solemnly. And what about the Zephyrian leadership? With Vexthal dead, who's in command? Intelligence suggests power has transferred to someone called the War Queen Tixara, Wright replied. Apparently a more militant leader who had been advocating for humanity's destruction from the beginning. Stone's mission may have inadvertently accelerated their timetable. The stellar manipulator was her project, Foster added, having joined the meeting. Before he died, Colonel Burke downloaded partial intelligence from their systems. The War Queen has been preparing this weapon for years, specifically designed to target Earth's sun. As they processed this information, the fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Earth gleamed blue and beautiful in the distance, blissfully unaware of the approaching threat. Stellar manipulator detected, the tactical officer announced. It's enormous. The view screen displayed a massive construct approaching from the opposite side of the system, a spindly, web-like structure surrounding a pulsating core of energy. It was moving directly toward the sun, trailing what appeared to be a stream of magnetically charged particles. "That's our target," Morrison told Ross. "Dr. Carter's countermeasure is ready. You'll need to deploy it directly into the core of that device." Ross studied the tactical display. "Getting past their perimeter defenses will be the challenge. After that, well, let's just say I don't plan on coming back from this one." "Captain," Morrison began. "Save it, Commander." Ross cut him off with a wry smile. "We all knew this was a one-way mission from the start. Just make sure it counts." As Ross prepared to depart in the shadow, Dr. Carter made a surprising request. "I'm going with her." "That's not necessary," Morrison objected. "The countermeasure is automated. Captain Ross can deploy it." "The countermeasure may need adjustments based on the device's actual configuration," Carter insisted. "And besides, I need to see this through. What we've done with Thanatos, I need to balance that somehow." Morrison wanted to argue further, but the determination in Carter's eyes stopped him. "Very well, but know that this doesn't absolve either of us." "I know," she replied quietly. "Nothing could—" The shadow departed with Ross and Carter aboard, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible as it accelerated toward the massive alien weapon. The rest of the human fleet engaged the remaining Zephyrian vessels, protecting the stellar manipulator, drawing their fire to create an opening. Aboard the Liberty, Morrison and Admiral Wright watched tensely as the shadow approached its target. "We're detecting energy buildup in the manipulator," the science officer reported. "They're initiating the solar disruption sequence." "Ross, Carter, you need to hurry," Morrison transmitted. "They're powering up." Inside the shadow, Ross navigated through a maze of Zephyrian defensive fire with impossible precision, the small ship dancing between energy beams that would have vaporized it instantly on contact. "Almost in position," Ross reported, her voice strained with concentration. "Dr. Carter, status of the countermeasure?" Carter was monitoring the readings from the stellar manipulator, her face illuminated by the holographic display. "The core is emitting magnetically charged tachyons, more advanced than we anticipated. I need to recalibrate our device." "Make it quick," Ross urged, as the shadow shuddered under a near miss. "Our stealth field is failing." Carter worked frantically, adjusting the countermeasure to match the frequency of the Zephyrian weapon. "The problem is, even with the correct frequency, we need to get this directly into the core. A proximity detonation won't be enough." Ross was silent for a moment, then said calmly, "So we fly right into it." "That would be suicide," Carter protested. "This was always a suicide mission, Doctor." Ross's voice was surprisingly peaceful. "The only question was whether we'd succeed before we died." On the Liberty, Morrison heard the exchange with growing dread. "Ross, Carter, we're detecting a massive energy surge from the manipulator. You have minutes at most." "Understood, Commander," Ross replied. "Countermeasure ready, Doctor?" Carter's voice came through, steady despite everything. "Ready, Captain. It's been an honor." "Likewise." Ross's voice remained calm as she addressed Morrison one last time. "Commander, tell everyone. Tell them we chose to survive." The shadow accelerated directly toward the core of the stellar manipulator. Its engines pushed beyond safety limits. Zephyrian defensive fire tracked it, scoring hits that tore chunks from the small vessel. But Ross's piloting kept them on course through sheer will. "Impact in 5, 4, 3. Ross's voice counted down. The transmission cut off as the shadow plunged into the pulsating heart of the alien weapon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a cascade of energy erupted from within the manipulator, its carefully calibrated systems disrupted by the human countermeasure. "Energy signature destabilizing," the science officer reported with growing excitement. "The magnetic field is collapsing." The massive alien construct began to break apart, its web-like structure twisting and fracturing as the countermeasure triggered a chain reaction throughout its systems. The pulsating core flickered, brightened to blinding intensity. then imploded in a spectacular release of energy that consumed the remains of the device. A cheer erupted on the Liberty's command deck, quickly subsiding as the reality of the sacrifice sank in. Morrison stared at the view screen where the shadow had been, feeling a complex mixture of grief, relief, and guilt. Victory confirmed. Admiral Wright announced formally. Captain Ross and Dr. Carter succeeded. Earth is safe. But even as they celebrated this crucial victory, reports were coming in from across human space. The Zephyrians were in full retreat, their coordinated fleet actions deteriorating into chaos as Thanatos spread through their ranks. "We're receiving surrender communications from multiple Zephyrian outposts," the communications officer reported with disbelief. "They're begging for help, medical assistance, treatment for the pathogen." Morrison exchanged a grave look with Admiral Wright. The moral weight of what they had done, unleashing a biological weapon that was now decimating an entire species, settled heavily upon them. "We've won," Wright said quietly. "But at what cost?" Morrison had no answer. He turned back to the view screen, watching as the remaining Zephyrian ships fled in disarray. "They chose war with humanity," he murmured, echoing Ross's final words. "We chose to survive." 5 years after what became known as the Zephyrian War, Commander Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the observation deck of the new United Earth Space Command headquarters, orbiting Mars. The expansive window offered a panoramic view of humanity's ongoing expansion through the solar system and beyond. The aftermath of the conflict had transformed human civilization, united by the existential threat they had faced. The formerly fractious colonies had consolidated into the Interstellar Empire, a name that still made Morrison uncomfortable despite his role in its governance. "Admiral," a young aide approached. "The Council is ready for your report on the reclamation efforts." Morrison nodded, taking a final moment to gather his thoughts. The reclamation of former Zephyrian territories had been proceeding for 3 years now, ever since the pathogen had run its course and been neutralized by environmental degradation. The council chamber was imposing, a circular room with representatives from every human world seated in tiered rows. At the center stood a holographic display currently showing the former Zephyrian homeworld, now being prepared for potential human settlement. "Admiral Morrison," greeted Council President Nakamura, "please proceed with your assessment." Morrison stepped forward, activating his presentation. "The Zephyrian homeworld has been confirmed habitable for human physiology, with minimal terraforming required. The pathogen has been completely neutralized, and no surviving Zephyrians have been detected in the primary settlements." "And the ethical considerations?" asked Councillor Okafor, who had consistently raised moral concerns about humanity's post-war expansion. Morrison hesitated. This was the question he struggled with most. "The estimated Zephyrian death toll from Thanatos stands at approximately 97% of their population. The survivors, mostly those in isolated outposts who avoided exposure, number fewer than 10,000. They've been relocated to a reserve on their secondary colony world, under humanitarian supervision." A murmur ran through the council. The scale of what humanity had done, however necessary it might have seemed at the time, remained shocking. "We saved ourselves at the cost of nearly exterminating another civilization," Okafor stated bluntly. "Does that not concern you, Admiral?" "It concerns me every day, Counselor," Morrison replied honestly. "But I would remind the Council that the Zephyrians initiated hostilities with the explicit goal of our complete elimination. They deployed atmospheric converters on multiple colony worlds, resulting in over 30 million human casualties before we responded with Thanatos." The debate continued, the same moral questions that had been asked repeatedly since the war's end. Morrison participated mechanically, his mind drifting to those who hadn't lived to see this new era: Stone, Burke, Ross, Carter, and countless others who had sacrificed everything to ensure humanity's survival. After the council session concluded, Morrison found himself back on the observation deck, joined unexpectedly by a visitor he recognized immediately, Lieutenant Foster, now Captain Foster, one of the few survivors from Colonel Burke's infiltration team. "Admiral," she greeted him. "I thought I might find you here." "Captain," he nodded. "What brings you to Mars?" "The memorial ceremony tomorrow," she replied. 5 years since the Shadow's final mission. Morrison had almost forgotten. Each year, humanity commemorated the sacrifice of Ross and Carter, whose desperate attack on the stellar manipulator had saved Earth itself. "Will you be speaking?" Foster asked. "They asked me to," Morrison sighed. "I'm not sure what to say anymore. 5 years of reflection hasn't made any of it easier to justify, even knowing what we were facing." Foster was quiet for a moment, watching the stars. "I still have nightmares about the mothership," she finally said. "About Burke and the others staying behind so I could escape. About the Zephyrians convulsing as Thanatos took effect." She paused. "But then I remember Proxima Colony. The recordings of families suffocating as the air was changed." "The lesser of two evils is still evil," Morrison said softly. "Yes," Foster agreed. "But sometimes that's the only choice available." She turned to face him directly. "You know, Colonel Burke said something to me right before he sent me back to the shuttle. He said, humanity wasn't given a choice about whether to fight this war. We were only given a choice about whether to win it." Morrison considered this. "Wise man." "He was," Foster nodded. "And he believed, truly believed, that what we were doing was necessary. Not good, not righteous, just necessary." As they stood in contemplative silence, a notification appeared on Morrison's neural interface. A report from the archaeological team studying the ruins of Kepler Prime. They had discovered records indicating that the Zephyrians had indeed eliminated 17 previous civilizations they had encountered, exactly as Vexthal had claimed. The justification in each case had been identical. The species represented an unacceptable variable in Zephyrian-controlled space. "They would have done the same to us," Morrison murmured, scanning the report. "Sir?" "Nothing, Captain." Morrison closed the report. "Just another piece of a puzzle we'll never fully assemble." As Foster departed, Morrison remained watching the stars. Humanity had survived and was now expanding into the void left by the Zephyrians, carrying with them both the triumph of survival and the burden of how they had achieved it. In his mind, he could still hear Captain Ross's final words. "Tell them we chose to survive." They had survived, yes, but they had also been transformed by that choice. The naive, optimistic species that had first ventured into the stars was gone, replaced by a harder, more cautious civilization that understood the universe's harsh realities. Tomorrow, at the memorial, Morrison would speak of heroism and sacrifice. He would honor those who had given everything to ensure humanity's continued existence. But privately, he would remember the full truth, that in choosing survival, humanity had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. As he turned to leave, Morrison's gaze fell on a small plaque mounted beside the observation window. It had been placed there after the war, a quote attributed to the combined logs of the Liberty during those desperate days. "They chose war with humanity. We chose to survive." It was both a warning and a promise, to themselves and to any other civilization they might encounter among the stars. Humanity would never again be unprepared, never again face extinction. Whatever the cost, whatever transformation required, they would endure. That was the legacy of the Zephyrian War. Not just victory, but the unshakable determination that humanity's light would continue to burn in an often hostile universe. For better or worse, they had ensured their place among the stars. Morrison touched the plaque briefly, then walked away, carrying both the triumph and the burden of that legacy as he had for 5 years, as he would for the rest of his life.